Welcome. We're returning to our study of the songs of ascent to pull strength in this time of confusion and crisis. And as we think about how the songs of ascent started in 120, in the distress that comes when you recognize how far away from God you are, the distance, and the actual desire and decision to turn, to go back towards God that comes in 121. And as the psalmist moves towards God through these 15 psalms, 15 steps in the temple maybe, or the 15 psalms they sing on the road from Jericho to Jerusalem. But as these psalms begin to roll out, we come to 122. And 122 is a psalm of the journey. It's the journey back towards, as the last verse says, verse 9, prosperity in the presence of God. And so it starts off and it says, I rejoiced with those who said to me, let us go to the house of the Lord. And then the psalm ends in verse 9, for the sake of the house of the Lord our God, I will seek your prosperity, or the prosperity of the city of peace. And so Jerusalem means city of peace. And so as the journey goes, that's the goal. They're headed for reconciliation with God that brings prosperity. And you go, prosperity? Is that a lot of dollars, a big bank account, fancy home, all that kind of stuff? No, that's not what prosperity means in the Hebrew world. It meant a relaxed relationship. There's no distrust. There's no fear. There is this ability to relax in the presence of another person, a powerful person. In this case, God. And so prosperity is what we really truly long for. And that's what we think we find when we get large bank accounts and so forth. But you can have that and not have prosperity. You can have a bunch of stuff and never experience shalom. And so how do you take this step, the third step, and begin to understand how to live in prosperity? Our feet are standing in your gates, O Jerusalem. Jerusalem is built like a city. What Psalms 122 begins to talk about, and then Psalms 123 applies, is worship. And then 123 comes along and talks about service. What we worship is what we serve. What we worship shapes our life. And so as the psalmist focuses on Jerusalem, he's focusing on being in the presence of God. He's not talking about going to a city or a temple. He starts off with the temple, but you notice the end verse talks about the people of God, the house of God. It becomes the Beit God, the house, the tribe, the nation of God. And so how do you get that? Well, there's three things that he emphasizes, and I want to show you that two of those focus on the vertical aspect that we have with God. When shall we see the face of God? How do we know we're in his presence? How we want to be in his presence? That's what worship's all about. That's what praise is all about. It's a voluntary thing. It's not something forced upon us. It's the response of a heart that's looking for and discovering the presence of God. And so as it moves to the city, he talks about how well organized it is. Well, that's what worship does. It centers you. It gives you a structure that gives you the possibility of prosperity, because now you know what's valuable and what's not, where to focus my time, where not to focus my time. And you see that. And then you understand that in the second element of that is not just a workable structure and a city of peace, but it's also a response of our deep need for God. I talked to an Alcoholics Anonymous member not long ago, and as he was talking, he said he spent most of his adult life struggling to get control of his addiction until he finally discovered that he had and ended up in needing a feeling or a understanding that God is real and has a place in his life. Now, I didn't get into the discussion, is the God that he found the one that he needed, or is that God the God of the Bible? That wasn't the point. The point is, unless you find out what it is you really worship, unless you find out what puts you on your face before the feet of something bigger than yourself, and that's what worship means in the Old Testament. It means to fall on your face and kiss the feet of someone. Kissing in ancient Israel showed your relative relationship. If you kiss someone on the cheek, you were an equal. If you kiss someone on the shoulder, you were one step down. If you kiss someone's hand, that meant that you were inferior to the person that you're seeking a relationship with. But if you fall on your face and kiss their feet, then you're absolutely worthless, nothing more than the dust on his feet. And that's the importance of understanding what worship is before God. We fall on our face before him, just like the disciples fell on their face before Jesus after he calmed the storm. They didn't know what to do, but they worshiped him. They fell on their face and kissed his feet. So you see that vertical dimension that we need. We need to have this understanding of the presence of God, because that puts things in order and allows us to understand his word and his judgment. And that's what comes next. But where does that judgment come? That's the third thing, where it talks about they stand on thrones of judgment and the thrones of the house of David. That has to do with how God's impact in our life and our seeking of his will has an impact on our relationships with each other. And that's the other place. That's the horizontal nature of worship. And it comes out in service. It comes out in what we do for each other and how we serve God by serving those around us. The vertical dimension, yes, we need that. But we also need to see that God is found in the face of people around you that are in need, and that God is shaping your heart so that you can respond to them. And that's the nature of worship, vertical and horizontal. It comes out in relationship. It comes out when we find God in the face of other people. The house. The house means the family at the end of the passage. And then he moves into Psalms 123, very short psalm, just a few verses. And as you look at that psalm, it says, I lift up my eyes to you who sit enthroned of heaven, as the eyes of slaves look to the hand of their master, as the eyes of a female slave look to the hand of her mistress. So our eyes look to the Lord our God till he shows us his mercy. Wow. You see, worship, what is at the core of what you see is valuable, expresses itself in service. You see that in the New Testament very clearly. There's 5 words for worship in the New Testament, and 2 of those are mainly translated service. And so you begin to understand that worship and service go hand in hand. It's the one who we love and adore so much that we're willing to fall and kiss his feet. We watch his hand for a response, what we do, his mercy, so that we can share that mercy with others. The 2 steps today: worship that expresses itself in service.